I am Tom Sheffield, Senior Director of Cybersecurity at Target, and I lead our Identity Access Management program. As we're heading to day 3 now, hopefully you all are coming away with more answers and questions. I know I have. I was trying to spend a lot of time learning about passkeys. We've heard them referenced twice already today in this room, which is pretty exciting. Over the course of the next 20-25 minutes, I want to share some of the insights and our lessons learned across our journey. My hope is that I can either inspire you or maybe help you get past some of the roadblocks that we ran into along the way. So I'll first talk about some of the factors that influence our decisions to begin our FIDO journey. I'll share some of our lessons learned along the way. And I'll also introduce a couple metrics that we still use today to track the program effectiveness as we've been rolling out through the journey. How many of you are familiar with the FIDO journey map? Not many hands so far. So this was released by the FIDO Alliance earlier, I think it was this year as a matter of fact, as a way to help organizations roll out FIDO. And as we take a look at it, it's a pretty simple map. There's three easy phases. The first phase is discovery and planning. I consider this the assessment phase. That's really about learning and assessing. What is FIDO? Can it work for you? Will you be able to do it? As you moved into the learn and design phase, I think this is where all the heavy lifting happens, especially if you start to run pilots. And I would encourage you to do so because they're a great way to do a lot of learning in a relatively safe way. And then as you get into land and expand phase 3, I really call this go time. This is when you actually start your rollout and start realizing your vision and your dreams, which is pretty exciting. Now, I'll begin by saying that the FIDO journey map didn't exist when we started, but I did try and spend a little bit of time mapping our experiences, our journey, back into the map, and we'll sort of take you through what that looks like. The first step in that first phase is really about learning. And just by the fact that you're all here right now tells me that you're either on a journey or know that you need to be or want to learn more about it. So you're learning right now, which is really, really cool. For us, when we first learned about FIDO, we quickly realized that it aligned to our identity vision really, really well. You see, our identity vision is built on 3 core tenets. We want to simplify technology. We want to take advantage of modern engineering capabilities like cloud and DevOps. We want to make sure that we're enabling our product and engineering teams to deliver solutions for their users without us becoming a burden or a barrier. We also want to enhance security. We recognize the inherent weaknesses of passwords and know that we need something stronger. And so FIDO really plays perfectly there. And then finally, we want to improve user experience. I want to create productivity opportunities for my users, but I want to do so in a way that allows them to remain secure and compliant. Because it's usually those trade-offs when somebody's trying to get around something to become more productive that we always run into problems in a cybersecurity space. So being able to leverage the simplicity and the ease of use of FIDO really fits naturally there for us. We actually began our journey sometime, I'm going to say, in the 2018 timeframe when we launched our first FIDO server. We then quickly decided that we're going to leverage that FIDO server for a step-up or second-factor authentication experience. At the time, all we had available to us were security keys and the Android mobile devices. But that was enough for us to get in and get our feet wet and really understand what it was going to look like. From that point forward, we recognized the opportunity to leverage FIDO as a primary authenticator, right, to reduce passwords. And we decided early on that we wanted to leverage platform authenticators. But if you think about the ecosystem in 2019, everything, all the stars, as I like to say, hadn't quite aligned yet. So as we were thinking about whether or not it was time for us to start our journey, there are a couple ways we had to look at the problem. The first is through an external lens, right? And I really look at this from a FIDO maturity perspective. About that time, we had seen the WebAuthn specification be launched, and then really gain maturity. And this was evidenced by the fact that if you remember in early 2020, we finally had all major operating systems, browsers, and hardware manufacturers supporting the standard and specification, which was really, really good. So if you're going to rely on platform authenticators, it's pretty obvious that you need to make sure that all the capabilities, all the technologies or tools that your users are likely to use all need to support the specification. And that actually came to fruition in early 2020. We also had to look at it from an internal perspective, right? This is where we start evaluating ourselves. Can we be successful rolling it out? And there are a few things working in our favor. The first is our culture. You see, we're a culture built on innovation. We're a culture built on engineering and solid engineering principles. We have a robust architecture that we defined as the Target platform that helps us run an omni-channel business, omni-channel retail business. The other thing that we knew that we had to focus on was compatibility with our hardware. And I touched on this a moment ago. And I'll say we were probably a little bit lucky here, because when we started working with our engineering desktop team about 3 or 4 years ago, we knew that we wanted fingerprint or biometric capabilities. Initially, it was fingerprint sensors. I didn't know in that moment that it was going to be for FIDO, but we knew that it was going to become a core enabler for us. Right now, we believe that over 90% of our devices in the organization are capable of leveraging biometrics and capable of integrating those biometrics into our FIDO ecosystem, which is really, really good when you're talking about platform authenticators. The other thing working in our favor is we have a very robust enterprise authentication pattern. What's really good about this is it was anchored, again, back to that identity vision. We wanted to leverage modern technologies. We wanted to leverage open standards. There are 3 core enablers in our pattern that really enabled us to go fast once we started. The first is that we have a single identity store. Every one of my users in Target has a single identity, right? One place to integrate FIDO, one place to leverage FIDO, which makes it a lot easier. Next, we have a robust enterprise logon service that we call Modern Login Services. This is integrated as the front door to all of our applications across Target. So again, one place to launch FIDO from. And then finally, we have that very robust SSO backbone, right? We have hundreds of applications and thousands of APIs that are integrated into this pattern. Now, collectively, all these things work together to create a value proposition for our users. Remember, we're trying to get users to do something they've never done before, right? We're trying to inspire them to take an action. And by creating value like this, to be able to say, hey, Mary, I'll be able to get all the applications you use on a daily basis to be able to be logged into this interface is a very valuable value statement. We coined our program Fingerprint ID within the organization. And we did this through a lot of testing. We tested different terms and phrases. And in the end, Fingerprint ID was the term that resonated the best with our users as we were rolling it out. Now, if you've been in the technology business for any period of time, I hope that you've done pilots for it. I suspect you at least know what a pilot is. There's a couple really key pieces about our pilots that we were able to leverage extensively. Obviously, the first one is the very nature of a pilot. It's a safer environment, right? But it's a chance for you to iterate and to learn and then make the necessary adjustments. We actually ran 7 different pilots between our idea inception through our formal launch to make sure that we were continuing to optimize the experience. We were trying to test hypotheses. We were trying to seek feedback. We focus on the flows themselves, the registration flow, the login flow. We focus on some of the messages some of the messages we use, both imagery and the specific words as well. And the other opportunity with pilots is allowed us to build partnerships. What you'll quickly realize if you're rolling this out is that this is an enterprise or organizational change initiative. You cannot do it alone within your identity team. Even within your cybersecurity team, you're going to need organizational partnerships to help spread your message. For us, that meant identifying some of the larger applications with large user bases. We partnered with them to have them help deliver our message on our behalf. So we created some FAQs that they inserted into their FAQ guides. We created some messages that we asked them to deliver in their voice. So our messages in their voice to their users. It helped us expand our reach in a way that was very natural, right? A user receiving an email from our HR application, for example, with our message embedded is a very natural occurrence. And so we're able to take advantage of those partnerships along the way. We also inserted ourselves into a couple key business processes. The easiest one to get inserted into was actually our HR onboarding process. We partner with our HR team so that when we're onboarding new team members into our HQ environment, we're immediately getting them registered for Fingerprint ID on the day they start. As was mentioned in a previous presentation here this morning, we wanted to make sure that those users never really had the alternative. They still have a password because it is still required in our environment, but we hope that they never have to use it because as soon as they started, we got them to sign up for Fingerprint ID. So we want them to only know the future now going forward. We also spent a lot of time working on a communication plan. Now, I'm not going to walk through the specifics of our plan because it's very specific to us. But what I'll highlight is there's a couple key things that you're going to need to have in your plan if you want to have success. The first is you're going to have to think about your various audiences. Who do you need to communicate to? And then you have to think about your messages. What do you need to say to them? What's different about each audience that you might need to tailor your message to a little bit? And then you have to think about the different channels and the different timing, like when to communicate to them to make sure that it's effective. So if I'm encouraging somebody to sign up, for example, is it better to receive that in an email when I'm just sitting in my inbox? Or is it better to show them that message when they're actually logging in? So think about how you want to deliver the message or when you want to deliver the message, and then the channel to use to get there. What we quickly realized, however, is that the plan itself is important, but we realized that the messages within the plan actually mattered more. And we used two different mechanisms to try and maximize the message. One is imagery, right? We use images to try and grab people's attention. We want visually appealing images, and we use them to deliver consistent messages. We use web and email banners like the one that you see here across our email communications, across some of our intranet portal pages, across some of those customer pages as well, or partner pages, as well, where we're trying to highlight the benefits of leveraging fingerprint ID. We created an animated login banner like the one that you see here that's prominently placed on our login page. So as a user's logging in, we're selling them right to the left of the benefits and the simplicity of leveraging fingerprint ID. And we're trying to encourage them right there to register for it. And then because stickers are cool, we created some stickers as well and have them placed strategically throughout the organization at the walk-up help desk, for example, to make sure that people get the opportunity to see it. So if you don't know about it any other way, you might run across it as a sticker in our environment. And we quickly realized that as important as the images were to grab people's eyes, right, the words on the page mattered even more. And what we quickly realized is the right words in the right ways grab people's hearts and their heads. And again, when you're trying to inspire somebody to do something never done before, you have to get them emotionally and logically. So in our value statements, as we were describing the solution with words, we contrasted phrases like wasting time, mistyping, and frustration with words like easiest, fastest, and most secure. Now also notice the order of those words in that second sentence, right? Easiest, fastest, most secure. If you're trying to get somebody when they're logging in, what they're thinking about in that moment is simplicity, is speed. Security's way back of mind. They're just trying to do their jobs. So we chose the order of the words as critically as the words themselves to make sure that we were resonating with our users. When we talked about our calls to action, we talk about a simple one-time setup, or it's easy as 1, 2. Not 1, 2, 3, it's easy as 1, 2. And we also leverage the simplicity angle when we talk about the ease of use. It's a simple touch or a simple tap. It's a quick glance. Now, notice that I didn't say passwordless, because we're not getting rid of passwords yet. And I didn't say FIDO, because FIDO's still a dog's name. And unless you're in the identity space at a conference like this, you probably don't know what it means. So through our testing, through our piloting, and through our iterations, we sort of settled on words like this in the orders which I described them as the words that really resonated well with our users. We continue to tweak the user experience even today. We've been on our journey now for approaching 2 years, and we continue to tweak the experience, right? We change our flows slightly here or there based on some of our new learnings. But when I think about the big opportunity around user experience, I think passkeys is the answer. I fully support the concept of passkeys. However, as an enterprise, there's definitely some considerations that we're running into, and I suspect if you're going to roll it out to your enterprise, you're going to have some of the same. You should have some of the same ones. We tried to bucket them in three different areas. The first are what I call philosophical considerations. Consider this. What is your company's position on syncing corporate credentials to a personal cloud or keychain? Do you want to do it? Yes or no? Very simple, but it's your decision to make. What's your company's position on allowing access to corporate resources through a personal device? Some allow it, some don't. Should you or do you have to have an MDM to be able to do so? Again, another consideration. We also identified some regulatory considerations, and the biggest one is whether or not FIDO in a passkey world is truly a second factor of authentication now. Now, I'm not here to debate whether it is or isn't. I think that's for a different conversation, over drinks maybe with a lot of people. But there's definitely some considerations now. So if you're a regulated business or have regulatory obligations, you're going to have to talk to your auditors and your regulators to decide whether or not that FIDO credential is now truly a second factor. In today's world, we consider it as such, right? Biometrics unlocking the key, we put at the top of the strong authentication pedestal, right? When you get into a world of multi-device credentials where that key can now be ported across devices, does it still carry the same weight as it did before? Another consideration, maybe a philosophical one as well, is whether or not when you're registering, what do you step up to? If you can't consider biometric with FIDO as the strongest or multi-factor authentication by itself, what do you step up to? What's stronger than biometrics? Do you go back to OTP? Do you go back to asking for an email again or a password again? So I don't know the answer to it, but definitely something that we're considering right now. And then finally, there's a technical consideration. And it goes back, at least in our case, it goes back to that first philosophical one. Do you allow today in your environment the syncing to an iCloud account, for example, in your Mac ecosystem? If you don't, rolling out passkeys will absolutely become a challenge. So it's easy to say, if you were in John Bradley's presentation yesterday, it's easy to say passkeys are the equivalent of passwords. If you use passwords, you can use passkeys. I don't dispute that in a theoretical realm. But in a practical implementation realm, it's not quite as easy as that. What I would argue is that the FIDO Alliance needs enterprises to adopt FIDO to help it achieve its vision of reducing our dependency on passwords. I think we all agree to that. However, what my challenge is to the FIDO Alliance and its members is that enterprises need flexibility. We need options. We need alternatives. We need to be able to control how this is rolled out so we can take advantage of it. Because the last thing I want to do right now is stop my FIDO rollout because passkeys aren't going to enable me to go forward. That is the worst thing that can happen for an enterprise who's already well on their journey like we are. So where are we now? We've been at this, again, for about 20 months now. We launched on World Password Day 2021 was our formal launch. Over that period of time, we've had almost 500,000 total registrations of fingerprint ID against our solution. What's really interesting about that number is about 60% of our store's team member population have registered for and are using FIDO to access the applications that they have access to. What's really interesting about this population of people is these are people that don't have target email addresses and don't have target devices. So these are people that I couldn't directly communicate to. This number right now for us shows us the fact that our messaging, our branding, our communications, all the things that we try to do around our marketing paid off because these users saw our messages through those indirect channels, right? They saw this through their daily lives and daily experiences, and then were inspired to actually go ahead and register. The other metric that we're really proud of, or frankly probably surprised about and also proud of simultaneously, is the fact that we've seen no significant uptick in support requests to our help desk or to our engineering teams. When we first started, we had no idea what this number was going to be, right? We were concerned, frankly, that we were going to overrun the help desk. As much as we tried to get communications out there and get good FAQs, we had no idea what we were going to run into. We had similar concerns that we were going to overrun my engineering team for level 2 and level 3 support requests. The more time they spent supporting a user meant less time they had to develop the solution. And so we were very concerned early on, but across the 20 months now, this has really been a non-issue for us, which has really, really been exciting. We've settled on 2 metrics that we've used to now track our progress. One I'm going to describe in the sort of what I call the rollout phase, which is where we still are. And this is very simply new registrations over time. And as you can imagine, it's just a simple plot of the number of registrations on a periodic basis, daily, weekly, monthly, it doesn't really matter. What I'll offer here is that I'm not concerned about a specific numerical target. I don't have a specific target of the number of registrations I want to get per day or per week, for example. What I'd rather see is an upward trend in the curve, right? More users registering, which is obviously good, and it plays into the second metric we'll talk about in a second. I'd rather not see a downturn, right? That means that things are slowing down. That means we probably need to do something. What we really use this graph for, however, is identifying the effectiveness of those levers we're pulling. So as we make a change to our flows, as we make a change to our communication, as we run a campaign, we're able to measure it very quickly. Was it as effective as we thought it was going to be? And if it was, maybe we can pull that lever again. And if it wasn't, maybe we stop pulling the lever or have to change the lever to make it get the results we're looking for. And then the second metric that we rely on today is a utilization metric. We call it fingerprint ID usage over time. And what this metric is really trying to show us is the number of users who have registered for fingerprint ID that are continuing to use it on an ongoing basis. It's measuring the relative percentage of users who are using fingerprints or biometrics, versus passwords. This is a metric that I absolutely want to see on a graph with a continual upward trend, right? More people using it from the previous graph means more opportunities, and then more opportunities here show themselves as more people using it. So I'm reducing my dependency on passwords. 100% adoption is the goal. We're not there yet, and frankly, I don't know when I'm going to get there. I'm happy right now to see a continual upward trend. Our next milestone that we're going to celebrate internally is at 50%, what I call the critical mass point. I want to be able to celebrate and go to my leadership and say, we have reduced our dependency on passwords in a significant way. And then from there, we'll keep plugging along to ultimately try and get to 100%. So just a couple minutes left. My goal today was to give you something to either help you on your journey, maybe inspire you if you weren't yet started. We'll take a look at some of the things we talked about and see how I did. We talked about some of the factors that influence our decision to begin our journey. How will you all know when the time's right for you? We talked about some of the things that are helping and hindering our rollout. How will our experiences shape your journey? And then we talked about a couple metrics that we use to guide our progress. How will you track your progress and measure your success? With that, my time is almost up. I'm happy to take any questions in the last minute or two that I have open.
Next time, I actually have here one that came through the app. It says, did you all do anything similar to what Bob Lord and Jen Easterly talked about with the seatbelt noise? In other words, you can still log in, but you'll have to listen to this irritating noise.
We haven't done anything, I would say, formally like that yet. We've done some testing of things that might thematically get there, but it's not a formal part of the program yet.
Anyone here in the audience? Libby.
Congrats on your journey. I'm just wondering how you also look at SSO as driving down the total number of authentications and how that factors into your FIDO story as well.
SSO is there natively. We have that SSO environment. So to your comment, we see fewer authentications in total per day because we have SSO. And those that we do see, again, we're trying to drive towards our fingerprint ID solution over a password to reduce our dependency on passwords.
A quick question. A couple years ago, you guys were experimenting with a virtual try-on program for makeup for users, and it drew the ire of some BIPA legislation for unintentionally storing face biometrics and biometric templates. Just curious how that's influenced how you think about moving forward with biometrics and the storing of that kind of data.
I will say when we began, we didn't specifically reference that event, so I don't have a direct correlation to that event itself. I will say in our communications to our users, privacy is one of the things that we talk about. Privacy is one of the concerns that they have, and what we try and articulate is that the biometrics never actually leave the device. It is something that stays on the device, and it's not actually a copy, if you will, of your fingerprint, right? There's been historically concerns around fingerprints being stolen. If you just think about the implementations today across the mobile devices, for example, right? It's a mathematical representation of your fingerprint that is stored on the device. And so we try and explain to our users how it works, and then we point them to specifically Microsoft's definition, Google's definition, et cetera, so that if they want more information as to how it's actually stored, it actually comes from the manufacturers themselves.
Time for one last quick one from online again. How did you deal with browsers that may not support WebAuthn yet?
It's something that we struggle with slightly. We have a supported browser matrix that we use that we reference on our FAQ page. The majority of our users, through our internal testing prior to going live, we had identified we're primarily a Chrome, Safari, and Edge shop. And so there are some quote-unquote edge cases, right? But we just communicate to those users that our supported platform is X and the supported browsers are Y, and then everything sort of goes from there.
Excellent. Well, we're out of time now. Thank you very much. This was a really informative presentation. Thank you.